All right, guys. First ever live stream. So we're going to see how this goes. But my goal here is to answer some questions because a lot of times I get too many emails and too many messages on Instagram to respond to them all. And I don't like to respond unless I can actually give a real response to people. And right now I've got a big backlog of people who are waiting for me to respond. And I want to give people the chance to ask me directly so they don't have to wait forever to get a response, and just have some interaction with the people who watch the videos and know what questions you want answered, maybe in videos or directly from me right now. So we announced this, I believe it was yesterday, and we already had some questions in the kind of community tab that people asked. And so I'm going to start off with one of those, and let's see how many we can get through in the time here. So thank you guys for joining me. I didn't know if anybody would actually show up, but I appreciate it. And if you have questions, I'm going to try to get through as many as possible while still answering them thoroughly. So first question I have is this, from Chris Archery. I've dried out my first two briskets. The point on the second was good, but the flat was dry. I had some overheating issues with my pellet smoker at the beginning of the second smoke / brisket. The stall lasted 7 hours, which seemed like a long time. Could the overheating have been the cause? I'm a little gun shy to do another before I sort this out. So I understand being gun shy. So if you're going to spend good money on a piece of meat, you do not want to have it ruined. It is a humongous pain, and it's super disappointing after you spent, I don't know, 10, 12, 16 hours cooking the thing to have it not be the way you want it. And to address the pellet smoker issue, so what can happen a lot of times, I would say there are two usual culprits here. Number one is if you're using a lower quality of meat. So if you're using select or sometimes even choice, the flat can dry out easily. So I would say that's one thing you can change. I don't know what grade of meat you were using, but if you get prime, you're going to give yourself the best opportunity to make the best quality brisket in the end. The second thing is pellet smokers, a lot of them, they have the fan that runs constantly, and so the temperature can swing based on how many pellets are in the fire pot at that given time. So I've cooked on a few different pellet smokers. I know Traeger's, they have, pretty big swings. Pits and Spits has like a 2-degree swing either way, so they turn the fan on and off. So you might think that your pit is malfunctioning, but really it's just maintaining the temperature rock steady. So depending on the kind of pellet smoker you have, you could get it really hot and then it'll cool down a bunch. And what happens is the radiant heat from that baffle plate just nukes the brisket. So you can burn things pretty easily that way. And then finally, the issue that I would say is most often overlooked, but the one that I look for the most when I'm cooking brisket and I want everything to be moist, is rendering the fat properly on the top of the brisket. So you might think that has nothing to do with the moisture. You might think if you add an injection or if you add water pans or if you spray a whole bunch, that will improve the moisture. And those things can help. But the biggest one, I don't know exactly why, I don't know the mechanism behind it, but the biggest one is if you render the fat, for some reason, every bite seems more moist. And that could be because you render the fat on the top, it might seep through the grains of the meat itself and you get the perceived moisture of the rendered fat. I'm not sure the mechanism. I just know that when the fat renders properly on top, you have a more moist brisket in the end. And I usually achieve that in an offset by cooking a little hotter because the gases kind of separate the hottest gases on the top. So the top of the brisket gets the most heat and the fat renders well. All right, looks like we got some comments here already. So let me see what we got. All right, Reed Spacer says first, what's that called where you swap the letters, the words? Is that a spoonerism, I think? Reed Spacer. Thank you for being first. I probably wouldn't have been first. Have you seen workhorse pits? I have not. Never even heard of them. But I'm kind of curious to check them out now. So I love to look at smokers that way. But yeah, I'll check them out. I don't want to speak from ignorance here. I don't know anything about them. Tim Crane says, what kind of rifle and scope are you using on your hunt? Are you reloading? If so, what is your loading? I am using a Weatherby. It's a Vanguard is like the line. The specific model is the AccuGuard because my thought on it was pretty simple. It's basically, I want the rifle to be as accurate as possible. If that means carrying a few extra ounces, that's fine with me, because my philosophy on all the gear that I got for the hunting trip was essentially this. I don't want my gear to fail on me. if I fail, I want it to be my fault. Like I couldn't, stalk the elk properly, or I couldn't find the elk because I'm just a moron and I don't know what to do. I don't want my equipment to let me down. So this was something where it's not a cheap rifle, but I wasn't breaking the bank to buy a super expensive, kind of match style rifle. I am reloading. So the caliber is 270 Winchester. And the load that I've found that I get the best groups with is, I think it's 56 grains of Hodgdon 4831 shortcut, a 150 grain AccuBond long range bullet, and what I use, Nosler brass. And then the primers that I found that work best so far are Winchester long rifle primers. So that's what I'm working with. I'm still tweaking that and just trying to get that dialed in. Okay, Graham Johnson says, I'm grilling beef ribs while watching this. Well, major respect to you. Salute. I always appreciate people cooking meat, especially if you're doing it with a real fire. So that's always good. Hopefully you serve some beef ribs to your neighbors and friends and introduce them to real barbecue, because one thing I've noticed is the more barbecue that I cook, the more I enjoy seeing people try real barbecue for the first time. And you're going to be doing them a favor, and it's going to make you feel great because you've introduced them to something that they've never really had before. So a lot of things get called barbecue, but really barbecue is cooking with a fire over a long period of time and accumulating smoke flavor. So do your friends and family a favor and make sure to share. Pat's Barbecue, how's it going? It's great. It's been busy filming videos, gearing up literally and figuratively for the hunt that I'm going on. I'm going to be leaving in about 3 weeks. So that's what I've been focused on, and I am super excited about this. Okay, Craig Richards, getting my first smoker for my birthday in 2 weeks, Brazos. Great choice. Basically, so people have asked me a lot of times what my relationship is with Old Country barbecue pits. It's basically this. We're really friendly. If they have a pit that they, are thinking about marketing, there have been times in the past where they send me one and I give them feedback, and then I'll use it for content. So like the gravity fed pit, I don't make any money on them selling any of the smokers. There's no condition on what I have to say, so I just give my honest feedback both to them and to the viewers. And the Brazos is basically the cheapest way to get a 1/4 inch thick offset that's reasonable quality and widespread distribution through Academy Sports. So great choice. It's thick enough and big enough to where you can start making incredibly good barbecue, and you don't have to spend the price of a car to get one. Mad Horse Barbecue, I think I already read one from him, but love your channel, sir. Super informative. Thank you very much. Let's see, any other questions? Hi from Australia. Well, good eye. Your videos have changed my Q game. Okay, well, good. Hopefully for the better. Let's see. What are some questions here? Favorite wood for venison. So I use basically the same barbecue wood for pretty much everything. The only exception is sometimes I'll use cherry because it gives a better flavor on what I'm cooking. Not a better flavor, sorry, a better color. So it produces a deep red color very quickly. And so I really enjoy that. In my opinion, more important than the kind of wood you're using is the kind of fire that you're burning. So if you have hickory and you're burning a great fire, you're going to have great tasting barbecue. If you have pecan, same thing. If you have oak, same thing. The fruit woods do tend to be milder, but yeah, so I use oak almost exclusively. And when I can find it, I use pecan because that's my favorite. There's subtle differences that I just prefer for that. Let's see. What type of wood do you use in Tennessee? Well, I'm in Kentucky. Here, I'm using white oak. So they use white oak here for like bourbon barrels and stuff like that. It's got kind of a, like when you split it open, you could hold it up to your nose and smell it. It smells kind of like vanilla. And so I don't know if it actually makes a difference, but it's just a nice smell and produces a great aroma and flavor in the barbecue that you cook with it. Okay. How do I season a smoker and how do you cook for 18 hours? What time to start finish. Seasoning smoker is very simple. Just get some cooking oil and spray the entire inside of that smoker with that oil. Cover all the surfaces because you're trying to prevent rust and you're trying to build a coating so that you don't have any kind of corrosion on it in the future. So cover the inside with oil, and it doesn't have to be any kind of fancy oil. It can just be canola oil, or you can go to Costco and get the big, jugs of oil. That's what I do a lot of times. And I use a pesticide sprayer, a clean pesticide sprayer. It's not something that had Roundup in it before. I go get a brand new one. I wash it out. I fill it with oil, and then I cover the inside with oil. Then burn a fire in there for 3 hours, get it nice and hot, 300 degrees. And then you're going to be able to open the pit, and you see that you have a nice coating on all the surfaces inside. You're going to prevent rust. And it's really that simple. Cover it in oil, build a fire, rock and roll. All right. And then how do you do a cook for 18 hours? What time to start and finish? Basically, my rule is this. I calculate the time that I think it will take, and then I build in like 30 or 40% extra time, right? So if I think it's going to take 10 hours, I'll allow myself 13 or 14 hours to get it done, because you can always rest for a little bit longer. If the meat's not done, then you're stuck. So that is a good rule of thumb. So back in the day, when I was in college, I wanted to buy humidor for cigars, and the best advice anybody ever gave me was figure out the maximum number of cigars you think you could ever possibly have at one time, double it, and get a humidor that size. And that proved to be a good rule of thumb there. All right. How do you feel about barrel smokers? So I'm assuming you mean like the pit barrel cooker, or I think the other one is the barrel house cooker. I've only cooked on those very little. And in my experience, they are kind of a more hands-off version of the kind of smoke flavor you get in a Weber Smoky Mountain. I'm sure that there's some differences, subtle differences in the smoke flavor, but I just haven't used it enough to really know. And I wouldn't want to try to make a bunch of statements about, this one's better than this one if I don't really know. So I think it's more important to be, honest with you guys if I don't know, because it doesn't do you any good for me to say, well, this is the way it is, when I don't know what I'm talking about. What's next? What's up from Hawaii, bro? Hawaii. That's one place that I've always wanted to go, and I've never been, because I want to go to a luau and see them cook a pig in the ground. I just think it's super, super cool. Let's see. Over 150 people watching, and on 12 thumbs up. Hit it, people. All right. Well, thank you for that. Heidi from Texas. Well, I am honored that a real Texan is watching the channel here. I appreciate that. Okay. How to get more smoke flavor from a pellet grill. So there are a number of different ways you can do this. Number one, I would say, is cooking at a lower temperature. So cook it like 225, because that extends the cook time, allows more smoke flavor to accumulate on the outside of that meat. The second thing, and this might be the most important thing, is I would say get high quality pellets. So there are some pellet manufacturers, I don't want to get sued or anything, but I know that they have patents for taking, say, alder and adding other wood oils to flavor the pellets in a certain way. So you might have oak flavor or hickory flavor, but it might not actually be hickory wood. So what I would say is get a high quality pellet where the pellets are made exclusively from the kind of wood that it says on the bag. So if you get, say, lumberjack pellets or smoke ring, and I'm sure there are lots of other brands, but those are the two that I've used and really liked. If you get those two, you're going to set yourself up to be successful, and you get to achieve the best possible smoke flavor with a pellet smoker. So no matter what kind of cooker you have, you should always try to get the very best barbecue off of that thing that you possibly can. So if you have a propane smoker, or you have an electric smoker, or you have, a 1,000-gallon offset, your goal should always be the same, to try to produce the best barbecue you possibly can. And then one other tip, even though I've never done this, I know a lot of smokers swear by it, is to get one of those smoke tubes and fill it with pellets and just set it inside, or light it, of course, set it inside the smoker, and you kind of double the amount of smoke flavor without ratcheting the heat a ton. So that's what I would say here. Let's see. Johnny Boylan. Hey, Mr. Mad Scientist BBQ fan here. Quick question. What will be the last barbecue innovation? Johnny Boylan. So Johnny Boylan is a former student of mine, that knucklehead. What will be the last barbecue innovation? I don't know. I think the last barbecue innovation would be something like a pellet smoker that trims and seasons your brisket and slices it for you all at the same time. I think that for me, part of the romance of barbecue is that I get to mess with the fire. I get to trim the meat. I get to adjust things and move things around. And if things are automated, for me, that takes some of the fun out. Now, I 100% understand how, if you got to leave for work at 6:30 and you need barbecue for dinner, why a pellet smoker would be the greatest choice ever, because a lot of them connect to Wi-Fi and stuff. You can control the temperature from your phone. You can see what temperature the brisket is at or whatever you're cooking in there. And it's just so convenient that it's hard to say no. And I don't fault anybody who has a pellet smoker and, they want to do that. I've used pellet smokers quite a bit in the past, and they are so ridiculously convenient. It totally makes sense. So no hate for pellet smokers, but for me, just being involved with the process is what makes it so fun. And the food at the end is, I don't want to say it's an afterthought, but for me, the joy of doing a cook at this point is when I know that I got the process absolutely perfect and I unwrap the meat at the end and I look at it and I can tell in the first second that it's unwrapped that it's a perfect brisket. To me, that feeling is what I'm going after. And if all of those things go well, then I know the barbecue is going to be great, and then people are going to be happy. I'm going to be happy, and it'll be a great time. All right. Let's see. Nice sweater. Love the Barbecue HQ. I also love the Barbecue HQ. If you're in Southern California, specifically Simi Valley, the Barbecue HQ is the place to go. So they're one of the only barbecue stores I know of in Southern California. Actually, they're the only one where you can get real high quality smokers. Like you can get Meadow Creek there. You can actually order a fat stack there. You can get all the Yoder smokers. Pretty much anything that's a high quality smoker, you can get there. It's awesome. And the best part about it is that the owners and the workers are real barbecue people. So I've been there, I don't know, 20 or 30 times. And more often than not, when I show up, there's meat cooking outside. So I appreciate that. They take it seriously and they really enjoy it. And it's ultimately going to be better for the customers because they actually know what they're doing. So, a lot of times when you go to retail places, the expertise, the people, with whom you're interacting is not always great. But at the Barbecue HQ, it's always great. They're super awesome. I have nothing but good things to say about them. Okay, Diego Onlu, maybe mispronouncing your name. Do you have any recipe for brisket injection? Railhead barbecue is not common, so there's no commercial options. Okay, so full disclosure, I never inject briskets. Just simply because it would be no, it's not just because it would be inconvenient. I also think that the issue is I don't actually think it makes the brisket better. If you do everything perfectly and you come out with a perfect brisket, the process is dialed in, it's all perfect, then I think a brisket injection actually detracts from the brisket that you're making. So in competitions, people use brisket injections because they're trying to pack as much flavor into a single bite as humanly possible. But that's not the kind of barbecue you'd want to make a meal out of. So a lot of times people who are getting into barbecue, they'll jump into the competition style cooking. So when they make ribs, they're going to, have 800 ingredients and, just kind of go nuts with it. I would say that's the wrong approach for the vast majority of people. Now, if you're getting ready for a competition, then yeah, absolutely do that. But if you're cooking for yourself or your family or your friends or an event, that's not really the kind of barbecue you're going to want to be doing. All right. Let's see. Arkham Knight OP says, hey man, thinking of starting a small business with a smoker, Yoder or Meadow Creek, offset or pellet? Well, I would say I prefer the Meadow Creek smokers. Even though they're reverse flow and that's not my typical go-to, I just think that they make really good stuff. And I've cooked on one of their 500-gallon pits. I've cooked on 120, and both were great. So on that one, I would lean toward Meadow Creek, but Yoder makes great stuff too. Offset or pellet, that is a two-part answer. It depends on what you want to serve to your customers, and it also depends on how much work you want to put in. Now, if you have the time to sit there and manage a fire and say, go offset all the way. If you don't, it might make more sense to get, a large size pellet smoker and just make the best barbecue you can on that. All right. Koa Huang says, thank you for your fire management videos. I bought the Old Country Brazos from your recommendation. Okay, well, you're very welcome. I hope you like the pit. I definitely love mine. Let's see. Some more thanks. Thank you for all the thank yous out there. I really appreciate it. Hearing that the videos help people to produce better barbecue, that's really nice. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's see. Big fan from London. Is Norm MacDonald your dad? No, he is not my dad. But that'd be pretty cool. Probably be laughing a whole lot more. Let's see. Next question. Thoughts on Lone Star Grills or Gator Pit? Okay, so Lone Star Grills. I have kind of kicked the tires on one, so to speak. Like looked at it and seen it while I was cooking, but I've never used it myself. This is my guess. I don't really know, so I could be wrong on this. My guess is that they have a problem drawing enough air, just because of the size of the stack and where the stack is located, and that would be my guess. I don't know that for sure. It seemed like that was having an issue, or the pit that I was looking at was having an issue there, but maybe not. Maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe it was just windy that day or whatnot. I don't really know, but that would be my guess. Gator Pit, I think the owner of that company is really interesting. I don't really know anything about how they cook, though. I know that several people have told me that they bought one and loved it, so I don't know beyond that. Okay, let's see. What do you think about master-built gravity smokers? Best of both worlds? So I have been meaning to cook on one of those for a while now, just have not done it. So I think from what I've heard, because people are always telling me about the smokers they have and their experiences with them, people really like them. But I know that they had some at the Barbecue HQ, and the manager there, Arvin, was telling me about how he had one and he had just kind of like a runaway temperature effect. So because those gravity smokers are often insulated, if you have a slight increase in the temperature, then more air is going to move through, and the more air that moves through, the higher the temperature goes. So you get kind of the snowball effect. It just runs away, and you could get 500 degrees in there if you're not paying attention. I think that's the only negative I've heard about it, but other than that, people seem to really, really like it. So it can be a convenient way to use kind of a real fire to cook barbecue, and you don't have to have it connected to electricity. Fairly simple, and from what I understand, the flavor is really good. So let's see. Should I convince my wife? Uh-oh, that's dangerous territory. Should I convince my wife the Brazos is better than the Pecos and justify the $600 difference? I don't know you. I don't know your wife, so I don't want to comment on this. But I would just say be very careful. Be very careful. All right. Let's see. Some tips on doing a brisket on a traditional charcoal grill. Appreciate the good work. Keep it up, boss. Just a Cali kid trying to up his barbecue game. So a traditional charcoal grill, I'm assuming something like a Weber kettle. So I would say, I don't know what it's called now. I would get one of those accessories where basically there's a channel of water and it separates the fire side from the indirect side. I think that is probably the way to go if you can get one of those, and you don't have to shell out tons of cash to, have it set up in the best possible way for indirect cooking. You can still make really good stuff. Just separate them from the heat as much as possible, and be mindful of how many wood chunks you're adding. So look at the color of the brisket to make sure that you're not adding too much smoke or too little smoke, because the darker the brisket gets, that's usually the more smoke it has. So with those kinds of grills, you can easily oversmoke the brisket and get kind of a bitter taste. You don't want to do that. So kind of with those cookers and the wood chunks, sometimes less is more. And you don't want to invest all this time and energy and money into something that's going to taste bitter and gross at the end. So I would say probably one chunk every hour, and then you can dial it up from there. But just look at the color. If it's starting to get really dark, then back off on the wood. You wrap the brisket, and you have to do it once first, and then you can adjust from that. Let's see. Any feelings on a lang? Yes, I want to cook on one. That's my feeling. I've seen them. So I think I actually saw a lang smoker before I ever really got into barbecue in any kind of meaningful way. And I've always thought that'd be really cool. They're awesome. And I know a lot of people use them. A lot of people really like them. And I just haven't had a chance to cook on them. So being in LA, there aren't a ton of lang cookers out there, but being, I guess, in the eastern half of the United States now, I'm sure somebody around Louisville has a lang, and maybe I could convince them to let me use it sometime. Let's see. Hey, Mad, what's the sweet spot on smoke chunks on gravity-fed smoker you reviewed? Oh, so what I found is I added a chunk of wood about every 30 to 45 minutes. And to me, that was about the right level of smoke flavor. So I tried more, and it got this kind of, it was almost a soapy taste, because I wanted to take it to the extreme and see, all right, if there's constantly wood in there to flavor the meat with smoke, is there a point where it gets bad? And yes, there definitely is. So I would say 30 to 45 minutes, put in another wood chunk during the time when it's unwrapped. After that, there's no need, because it's wrapped. It's not going to absorb any more smoke flavor. But I find the best results adding one chunk every 30 to 45 minutes, probably about the size of a baseball. All right. Ian Aker says, who is better at improv, you or Liam Neeson? If any of you know what that reference is to, I think you'll get the joke. But Liam Neeson is definitely better at improv than I am. All right. Harry the Horse Barbecue. Hey, Jeremy. Oh, I just lost it. Like I said, I'm not great with technology. I was born Amish. So let's see. How's your health after relocating to Kentucky? Love your videos. That's Joseph Caccini. I probably butchered that. Yeah, health is good. So I had 2 ear surgeries, and my hearing is now definitely improved, especially in the right ear. The right ear is a lot better. The left ear was the most recent surgery, and it's still continuing to get better. Yeah, so kind of put me out of commission for a while, but I'm back to doing normal things, and I don't really know what to say, except we're going to wait and see how the hearing improves. All right. Hey, Jeremy, how often should I clean my offset smoker? Eric Garcia. I would say, well, I guess that's a personal choice. If I see stuff starting to build up on the grates, that tells me it's time to clean the offset smoker. So what I do is pretty simple. So I have one of those big torches that I connect to a propane tank, and I open the smoker up and just blast the grates with that thing to well, burn off a bunch of stuff. And anything that's kind of residually there on the grates, it kind of turns it into charcoal, so it scrapes off easily. So I'll hit it with the torch. Then I have this big, long brush that I use, and I scrape the grates to try and knock things off. And then I get in there with a pressure washer. And so what I do is I pull the grates out, pressure wash the grates and try to take them down to bare metal. And then I do the same thing on the inside of the smoker barrel, and I put everything back in. I start a fire. I let the fire go for maybe 30 minutes just to dry everything off. And then I repeat the process of seasoning, cover the inside in oil, and let it burn in for 2 or 3 hours. All right, what's next? Vincent Segura says, I seen on another channel that the gravity smoker by Old Country started to give off a nasty odor due to I think it's insulation melting. Have you came across that issue? No, I'm sure it's possible, but I really haven't heard of that before. And I used the one that I had quite a bit, and I never had any of those issues at all. And I would assume that the insulation would be fairly resistant to heat, especially at smoker temperatures 200, 300, 400 degrees. I wouldn't imagine that it would start to break down and give off a bad odor. It could have been something else, and maybe some grease in there that was kind of rancid. I really don't know. It's possible, and I don't want to speak from ignorance there. Let's see. How do you control temperature on an indirect Weber charcoal grill? Okay, so you just control the temperature with the vent at the top and the intake at the bottom. So you just dial those in my experience. But yeah, you just dial them in until the temperature is rock steady for like half an hour. Then you can open it up, put it on your meat, and you're pretty safe to walk away for several hours at a time, and it will kind of keep doing its thing, and you don't have to, be out there messing with it all the time like you would on an offset smoker, which is going to require a lot more diligence, just because you have to add wood all the time. You have to adjust the fire so it's burning cleanly. You just have to mess with it more. All right. What else we have? Have you used any exotic / non-traditional wood in your cooks? If so, what and how did it turn out? 99.9% of what I use is oak and pecan. The weirdest wood I've ever tried to use to smoke anything with was almond, and it was great. And I don't know that that's even a weird wood. It's just what happened to be on hand at a place where I was one time. And it was great. So it's my understanding, at least, I've never really tried to, track this down and really find a definitive answer to this. But it's my understanding that any hardwood will be okay for smoking. So you can use whatever's in your area. So I think part of what makes barbecue really cool is that barbecue in different areas is unique because they use the wood that's from that area. Now, there is kind of a question in my mind as to whether the species of wood is the most important, or if the region where the wood is grown is the most important. Maybe the soil and the conditions there are more important than whether it's oak or whether it's hickory or pecan. I would guess that the species is the most important part, but I don't know for sure. I want to actually do a test in the future in a video where I compare pecan grown in one location to pecan grown in another, oak grown in one location to oak grown in another, and see if the woods from the same location are more similar to each other, or the species that are the same are more similar to each other. So, of course, it's not going to be super scientific because it's all going to be subjective based on taste. But I think it would help inform people's decisions on what wood to buy. So a lot of people think, oh, well, if Aaron Franklin uses post oak, that is the only barbecue wood to use. It's a great barbecue wood, but there are other choices that would be equally as good, depending on availability where you live. So don't let anybody convince you that there's only one barbecue wood and that's better than all the others. All right. Can you do a video on how you clean the 500? Okay. Well, I just kind of broke down how I clean it, but yeah, I could do a video on it. It's no problem. You see exactly what I do. I have just a really basic pressure washer. I have that torch and a sprayer full of oil, and of course a fire. So those are the tools that you'll need if you want to do it. Okay. My offset is the cheap Kingsford offset smoker, and picked it up for $270. The beef ribs and my second brisket turned out great. That's awesome news. Okay, so here's the thing. You can still make phenomenal barbecue on those inexpensive smokers. It's just going to take a lot more work to get there, because the fluctuations in temperature are going to be much greater. You're going to have to work harder to burn a clean fire. You're going to have to use smaller splits. It's just going to be a tough road, but it can be done. So all the principles that apply on cooking on, say, a 500-gallon offset are exactly the same when you cook on a small backyard offset, whether it's thick metal or thin metal. The principles are the same. You just apply those principles to your specific situation. So if you know you need to maintain a consistent temperature, then okay, well, when I add a log here, in the thinner offset, the temperature spikes way too high. So you might say, okay, I'll have to use smaller splits. So you cut them down to smaller size, and you can continue to burn a clean fire without huge temperature spikes. So exact same principles, but you just have to apply it to your specific need. Let's see. How long do you hold your briskets for a catering gig? It depends on what time the gig is and what meat it is. So ribs, I don't ever really hold. So ribs I do as close to we're leaving to go to the event as possible. Just because, in my opinion, they don't really hold well. Briskets, I'll hold them up to 12 hours. Pork butts, the same, up to 12 hours. It just depends totally on the situation. But I'm gonna rest briskets and pork butts minimum of 4 hours, and I'd like to let them rest for at least 6. Okay, can't believe you haven't been approached by some network to do a show. I don't know. I don't know how much I can say about this. So I guess I won't say anything about it. But I think that'd be really cool. I would definitely like to do that. And thank you for the confidence you have in me there. Appreciate that. Loving the live stream, Jeremy. Big shout out from London on the night shift. Well, thanks for watching all the way in London. I appreciate it. I'm kind of curious to know what barbecue is like in different places around the world. So I'm like, well, what's barbecue like in, Belgium? Does it even exist? Does it exist in Germany? Does barbecue exist in Poland or in Namibia? I'm sure that some form of cooking meat with a fire exists. I'm very confident about that, just because I think it's so integral to humanity. Is you have meat, you cook it with a fire, you eat it, it's good. But I just want to kind of know what forms it takes in different places. That's something I think would be really fun to check out, and it's something that's always fascinating to me. So there was a show on Netflix. I don't remember what it was called though, but I think it was like 4 or 5 episodes. There's like fire, water, earth, something like that. Somebody knows the name, you could put it in the comments here. But the one about fire was by far my favorite. I absolutely loved it. I think it started off with some Aborigines in Australia hunting like monitor lizards or something like that, and then cooking them with an open fire. Super cool just to see how different cultures in different places deal with cooking meat with fire. So anyway, that was a long-winded response to hi from London, but that's something I definitely like to pursue in the future, learning about those kinds of things. Okay, can you talk about how you developed a relationship with a commercial meat supplier? Large quantities of meat are hard to find, especially boneless turkey breast. Yeah, so when I started, basically, I had no idea what I was doing. Like nobody handed me a playbook and said, this is how it works. So I adopted the mentality of, what do I have to lose by asking? They can say no, but I've not lost anything. So I looked up commercial meat suppliers and called them and sent them emails and tried to set up an account. Got rejected a couple of times. And then eventually, a couple meat suppliers agreed to work with me, and it was great. So I think if you adopt the mentality of they can only say no, right? Don't be embarrassed to ask, and make them tell you no. So if you want to try to get something accomplished, there are a million ways to find a no, right? But you have to be persistent to find a yes in those situations. And so that's kind of what I tried to do. So find a way to get them to say yes, right? To make it work. All right. Thoughts on Chef's Table Barbecue? I did not feel like it did the craft any justice. I have not watched it, to be completely frank with you. And the reason is because I know the first episode is Snow's Barbecue with Miss Tootsie, and I'm actually going to be releasing a video about that. And I didn't want anything that I saw there to influence anything I might say for the video. So there are going to be some parts where I have to kind of fill in details and give some background to the place. And I don't want to watch that until I make the video, so I'm not rehashing exactly what I saw in the video, because it's easy to just, I guess, regurgitate things that you've already heard. And I don't want to do that. I want it to be just my original opinion, and then it can be informed by other people's, and I can say, oh, I think I was maybe wrong about that. But I want to give you my impression of my experience there, and I don't want it to be colored by something I watched on TV. All right. Have you ever thought about taking some recipes from fans and rating them and seeing different ways to improve them? I have not thought about that, but that's not a bad idea at all. So one thing I had thought about was doing like a rub contest. Is like put out a call to anybody who wants to pitch in and send me a rub, and then I will make as many racks of ribs as possible to test them all out, and then have a bunch of people score them, and we'll declare a winner. And then we could do something. I haven't really figured out how we would, give the winner a prize or something like that, but I think that'd be a fun idea, and it would give somebody out there who might be, a relative no name, a chance to really shine and show that they know what they're doing, even though maybe they're not, on TV like Gordon Ramsay, but they're just killing it in the backyard. So I thought that'd be a cool idea. Did they stop making Old Country gravity-fed smokers? I don't know. I think they took them off the website. I think they sold out really quickly. And I think, this is my guess, I don't know. I think that they do production runs of different models. And so I think they did a limited production run because they didn't know how the gravity-fed smoker was going to sell. And they haven't, re-upped the inventory yet. And so they're still waiting on it to show up. I don't really know. I don't really think it's my place to kind of badger them and figure out exactly when they're releasing stuff. I'm kind of in contact with them a couple times a year just to see what's going on. But yeah, I don't really know all that much. But if a lot of people want to know, then I can give them a call and see where things stand with the gravity-fed smoker. Let's see. All right. Hey, Jeremy, would you mind making a video showing the process to start a catering / pop-up barbecue operation? Love barbecue and want to start selling it. Nick Demph. I'm not opposed to it, but the only issue that you run into there is the specific laws and regulations in every place are going to be different enough that your own situation may require a vastly different approach to setting up a barbecue operation. So in some places, like in Texas, I talked to the health department in Austin I talked to one of the guys there for like an hour, and they have a very defined way of what you need to do to set up a barbecue operation. They're like, okay, smoker has to be screened in, no meat prep can be outside. They have everything laid out. This is what you need to do. Whereas in LA, they have nothing because they don't even have a category of how to, figure out what barbecue is. So the idea that people are cooking meat with a fire outside is kind of foreign to them. So they have no real way to do it. It doesn't even exist in the health code. And I've read the health code from start to finish. It doesn't really even exist. So basically the best you can hope for there is you start a restaurant and just park a smoker outside, and they have no reason to say that it's not allowed. So they just let it slide. So every place is going to have different rules and a different way to go about it. So it would be very individual. So it might be unhelpful to say, this is what you need to do to start a barbecue business. All right. Tony Attard. I realize I haven't been saying all the names. The show you're talking about is an Australian show on SBS television. It's called Food Safari. And there was 3 groups, 1 earth, 2 fire, and 3 water. I don't think that's what it was. I think it had Michael Pollan in it. I think it was, I don't know. It could have been that. But I know for a fact that I watched it on Netflix. Salt and pepper is more important than anything. I would almost agree with that. And that was funny one. I would almost agree with that. I would say the quality of the fire is the most important. And then probably the quality of the meat. And then the quality of the salt and pepper. But without the salt, whatever you're cooking isn't really going to be all that great. So I don't know. I don't know how you quantify that exactly, which is the most important. But regardless, it's one of the essential things, salt and pepper. Let's see. Jeremy, ever dry brine a brisket or beef ribs? Do you recommend it? I'm using a Weber Smoky Mountain. That's Nick Vieira. I don't dry brine brisket or beef ribs. I've dry brine steaks plenty of times. I've never done it on brisket just because what can happen is this. So I started a kosher business in LA as well. And so with kosher meat, what they do is after they slaughter it, they heavily salt the meat. The idea is to draw out as much blood. Now, whether or not that's effective is up for debate. Anyway, I'm not trying to start a flame war here with the kosher people. So they cover it in salt and then they rinse it off. So it's kind of like a dry brine. And what can happen is the exterior surface of the meat won't quite be salty enough for the way you would want your barbecue to turn out, but the inside still has quite a bit of salt in it. And so if you salt on the outside, what can easily happen is you have way too much salt on the outside, but it doesn't really penetrate toward the inside of the meat. I think it has there's some weird kind of osmotic effect going on. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think on a cut that large, I would just want to go with the way that I know works rather than trying something crazy, even though I do like to try weird things just to see what the result is. So that's actually a good idea to test out. Dry brining a brisket, does it work? Is it better? Is it a superior way to do it? I don't know, but I'm willing to try it and find out. A really good idea there. Let's see. Okay, Mike, please. Jeremy, I botched a brisket the first 2 times I've cooked it. Give up or try again? Tips? I would say try again, of course. Most people, I would say the vast majority of people, the first time they cook a brisket, it doesn't turn out great. Now, some people just nail it from the very first time, and those people are superstars. I definitely did not. So I would say the only way you're going to get better is to keep making brisket and changing small things kind of incrementally to get to exactly where you want to be. So you can use the basic roadmap that somebody gives you. So you could use my how to smoke a brisket video as the roadmap to, how to do a brisket the first time. And then you can adjust based on your smoker or your flavor profile preferences, whatever you want. But you could use those principles to get you in the ballpark of what you want to do. So I'd say try it again. It's worth it because that time you nail it is going to make all those times you failed totally worth it. So I don't play golf, but I have friends who do, and they say that you could hit a bunch of horrible shots all day, and then you just absolutely nail a shot, and it makes the whole experience worth it. And I think barbecue is kind of that way too. So you could have a lot of screw-ups, and I had plenty. You can have a lot of screw-ups, but when you nail it and you know you nailed it, it feels so good that it's worth the screw-ups along the way. So I'd say try again. All right. Somebody said my first one caught on fire on my green egg. Yeah, yeah. I've had stuff catch on fire before. It's not fun. It's really depressing. Let's see. LOL, I must be unlucky, or he doesn't want to answer my question. He skipped it 3 times. I give up. I'm sorry, P1 Harley Ford. But they just scroll past, and I just miss them. Let me see if I can find it. Give me a second. Humor me as I look for this. I don't know how many comments there have been, but if I can find it in the next few seconds. Here we go. Can you do a video demonstrating how you rest and reheat a brisket the next day? I saw one episode, your brisket was done late at night, and you said you're going to reheat it, and is the results as good? Okay, there you go. So this is what I would say. So when I first started cooking on the 500-gallon, I always would serve the brisket on its way down in temperature. So I would cook it, pull it off. It's cooling. When it gets to serving temperature, that's when I would serve it. So I try to time things out. So that's the way it would work. What I found is it's actually better to give it a longer rest. It might seem lazier. So my thought was, because I knew other people would do something like this. Say they're serving at noon on Saturday. On Friday morning, 8 a.m., briskets go on the smoker, right? They cook it until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. They pull them off, and they rest them until the next morning at, say, 9 o'clock. They make sure to keep them, food safe, still, 140 or above. I think it's actually technically 138 and above, but I'm not 100% sure. But they keep it food safe and just let it ease along and stay warm. And then they might reheat it to 155, go to the pop-up event, slice it up, and serve it. And at first I thought, oh, that's kind of lazy. You're trying to sleep. And you're sacrificing the quality of what you're making. Turns out it's not true. Turns out it's a superior way to do it, because when I started letting them rest from like 1 a.m. to 8, 9 a.m., the quality of the results were definitely superior. So the moisture distribution throughout the brisket was always better. It was a way to, if anything was a little lagging behind, like say the flat wasn't quite as tender as I wanted, then it seemed to just kind of equalize everything, and you got really good tenderness, really good moisture distribution, and just a superior product in the end. So that's how I would kind of kind of do that. All right, who's next here? How do I get the bark to settle on my brisket? Mine usually comes off after I unwrap. Okay, that is a very common problem. And what happens is that, well, I'll tell you how to fix it. So you're wrapping too early. Okay, so if you wrap your brisket before enough water has been sweated off of that brisket, what happens when you wrap it is all that evaporation fills the wrap and washes away the bark. Okay, so you have to get it dialed in to where you evaporate enough water to where you don't wash away your bark that you worked so hard to create, but you also don't want to wait too long because you can get crusty exterior surfaces that never soften up. So I would say what you would do is kind of a rule of thumb is if you want a certain level of bark at the end, okay, go 45 minutes past that bark before you wrap. Because when you wrap, you're going to soften up the bark and it's going to be a little looser and a little softer than when you wrapped it. But if you wrap it too early, all the bark's going to come off. So slightly past what you want, and then after you wrap, it kind of dials it back into exactly where you need it to be. And that's going to take some experimentation because it's going to be different on different cookers. But I would say that's the best way to kind of get the bark that you're after. I think that, you know, when you unwrap a brisket and it kind of looks like a meteorite, but like a really soft meteorite, there's nothing crusty on it. That is the kind of bark that I'm after. All right, let's see. When you rest a brisket for so long, 8+ hours, are you just resting in towels / cooler or in something heated to maintain food safe temp that long? So you can do it either way. You can buy something called an Alto Sham. Those are great, but they are not cheap. You can rest it in a cooler. So if you fill up a cooler with 10 briskets, well, you guys are probably not cooking 10 briskets at a time. If you put a brisket in a cooler, right, and the brisket is a fair amount of the volume of that cooler, so a small cooler for one brisket or two and bigger coolers for more briskets, it will stay. So if you put it in at, say, 170, it will stay above 140. If you have good quality coolers, it'll stay above 140 for 12 hours plus, no problem. I've seen a cooler full of briskets where all the briskets go in between 165 and 170. And 14 hours later, the lowest temperature I could find in any of the briskets was 151. So you can do it in the cooler, no problem. If you have like a commercial operation, then you're going to want to use an Alto Sham because then you can dial in the temperature and you don't have to worry about it at all. If you're cooking for yourself, I would just use a cooler unless you just have tons of cash that you want to spend on something. In which case, get an Alto Sham. Those things are amazing. All right. Let's see. Having trouble maintaining even temps. How do I deal with temp spikes after adding wood on my Brazos offset? So I think you can overcome this problem a lot of times by reducing the size of the wood. Okay, so you can split it thinner and you can make the splits shorter. You can cut them down shorter. Now, the issue is, if you split them thinner, if you split them too thin, what happens is you get immediate flame, good, but you don't build up any coals really. Like the coals are immediately gone, which is gonna make continuing the fire really, really tough. So I would say make them a little thinner, but not too thin, so they don't just, you know, disappear on you because you wanna keep coals. But make them shorter, so the amount of wood you put in each time is less, and so you don't have as big a temperature spike. Now, the other thing is, the thicker the wood is, the more even the heating curve will be. So if you have something that's, you know, tiny, this big around, you put it in there, you have an increase in temperature quickly, but it drops off quickly. Now, if you have a thicker piece of wood, it will increase more slowly, but last for a long time, and then leave coals that are going to light the next piece of wood. So you have to find what works in that smoker. So basically, if you're using the Brazos, I don't know how much sense this will make, but I think pieces of wood that are about this big around are good, maybe up to this size, but generally you want them short so you don't have huge spikes. And that thickness is also good for maintaining a coal bed while you're running the fire. And I know it's not fair, but running a 500-gallon offset or a 1,000-gallon offset is always going to be easier than a backyard pit. But if you stick with it and, you know, you pay careful attention to how the fire is burning, you can produce amazing quality stuff in just you know, a simple backyard offset. You know, just follow those kind of principles. You can make great, great, great stuff. There's no need to buy a 1,000-gallon pit if you want great barbecue. You can make it on a backyard smoker. All right. Okay. What do you think of Harry Sue's method, at least on YouTube, to wrap a brisket as soon as the rub is set and not really have other markers to look for? Well, I am not a competition winning barbecue cook. So if you're trying to win a competition, I'd say you're probably right. I don't know. I never had the urge to compete because I thought I could either compete in barbecue or I could flush money down the toilet. You know, neither one of them sounds good. I say that kind of as a joke, of course, but yeah, I never really had the urge. So if my experience is correct, I would say that's absolutely the wrong way to do it. But I don't want to tell the guy, I don't know, maybe it's the right way for competition. But for regular barbecue that you're going to cook and eat and make a meal out of, I think it's the wrong approach. Just my opinion. You know, I don't have a monopoly on the truth here. So that's my experience and my opinion. All right. Let's see. Mad Scientist BBQ. What do you think of trying to make an offset smoker out of brick? I think it could totally work. So if you go to Kreitz Market in Austin, they only have brick pits and they produce really good barbecue. It's not even really an offset, but like they just build the fire like outside the pit, and you know the convection pulls the heat into the pit, and they use that to cook. And you can make great quality stuff. I just think that it doesn't really probably provide too big of an advantage over metal because you can move the metal around. The bricks would be really tough to move around, obviously. So if you know that you're never going to move that thing, yeah, I'm sure you could build an offset out of brick. It'd probably work really well. I don't know. I've never seen anybody try it, but if anybody out there does try it and you want to send me a picture, I'd be happy to look at that. That'd be really cool. All right. Let's see. Jeremy, how do I keep my rubs from segregating when using kosher salt? Should I use table salt in my rubs instead? I don't like to do that. I like to salt separately. And then I like to put any other kinds of spices in the rub together and do that as the second step. So I can control the salt and I'm not worried about oversalting, then add, say, garlic, onion, chipotle, dry mustard powder, whatever I want after the fact. So that way I have the salt dialed in, and then the amount of spices I can control completely by how much I put on with the shaker. If I'm just doing salt and pepper, which is what I usually do for like catering events and stuff like that, I just mix them 50-50. A lot of people say by weight or volume. It's by volume. So I take a shaker, I fill it halfway up with kosher salt, halfway up with 16 mesh black pepper, shake it up and use it. And in my experience, it's still pretty evenly distributed because they're about equal in size, but the salt can settle to the bottom. So I just kind of shake it regularly as I'm using it. So that's what I would do there. All right, we're coming up on an hour. We'll do 2 more questions. Let's see. Do you know of any smoker fabricators in the Midwest? I don't know that I do. I know Yoder is in Kansas. I don't know if that counts as the Midwest, though. I guess I'm technically in the Southeast. Yoder's in Kansas. Horizon Smokers, somewhere out there. I think Horizon Smokers are the development of the guy who developed the original Oklahoma Joe back when they were made out of 1/4-inch thick steel. Before I think maybe Charroil bought them or somebody bought them, and they kind of got commercialized and made in China and made with sheet metal. Those are the only 2 that I think would be maybe close. I don't even know if those are technically part of the Midwest. I think so. Not sure. All right. Last question. How often, so this is Surgatron. Last question, here we go. How often do you monitor your $1,000 offset when smoking a brisket? Sorry, I forget the name of it. So I think he's talking about the Brazos with $999, pretty darn close. I would say every time I add a log to the fire, I'm looking at the temperature. I'm looking at the fire mostly. So when you cooked on an offset long enough, you can pretty much tell how the thing is cooking by looking at the fire. So after spending, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of hours looking at that fire, I know, okay, that fire is going to produce a temperature in the cook chamber of about 250, 260 degrees or whatever. So every time I add a log, I look at the fire, and I may or may not look at the actual temperature dial. I usually probably will, just to kind of confirm that I'm on the right track there. But it ends up being probably every 15 or 20 minutes. Now, I have done it where, you know, I work the next day or something, I'm finishing the cook overnight, where like I'll wake up every 30 minutes and just go add a log to the fire, and usually use a bigger piece just to kind of prolong the whole process. But yeah, probably this is how often I'm checking the fire on the Brazos. Now, I think we put this in the post, but I'm not 100% sure. So we're going to be giving away a Mad Scientist BBQ shirt. We're going to put these on the website at some point. So what we're going to do, oh yeah, Mad Scientist BBQ shirt, very soft, very great. Behold the Mad Scientist BBQ shirt. It will endow its wearer with supernatural barbecue abilities. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the comments here. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all the questions. I did my best, but I want to give meaningful answers, and I just couldn't get to them all. We're going to find a comment, and we're going to announce the winner on the next live stream or the next video that we do, and we're going to send you a free shirt, and thank you for participating. So I hope this was helpful to you guys. We're going to announce the next live stream, and you can give some feedback there. And let me know what you would want more of, what you want less of, what was helpful, what was not helpful, because really these are about you and answering your questions. So I really appreciate all you guys showing up, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, take care.